2022. We're here in the Center for Media Innovation at Point Park University in downtown Pittsburgh for your continuing coverage.
We have a lot to catch up on since we wrapped last night, including victories and losses in both the presidential and the congressional races.
And there are only a handful of states that have yet to declare a projected winner, including some that are currently tied or close to a tie. We'll break down what's going on in those states that include our very own Commonwealth.
This is Watch History Happen Election Night 2020 continuing coverage. All right, so welcome everyone to Watch History Happen Election Night 2020 continuing coverage. I'm Colton the Bias.
And I'm Taylor Spirito. Election night wasn't the end of it, as a handful of states have yet to declare a winner. Mail-in ballot deadlines were extended one state until next week. It's unclear on when we'll see definite results pop up and projected winners announced in some of these states.
Since we wrapped last night, some states have declared a winner, some expected to, and some not so much. So let's break those down.
So Colton, let's talk. Both candidates, there's how many? 1, 2, 3, 4. There's 6 states that have left to be called. So let's break down some of these numbers. Donald Trump has won. These include states from last night as well. Montana, Idaho, Utah, Wyoming, North Dakota, South Dakota, Nebraska, Kansas, Oklahoma, Texas, Iowa, Missouri, Arkansas, Louisiana, Indiana, Kentucky, Tennessee, Mississippi, Alabama, Florida, Ohio, South Carolina, West Virginia, and one of Maine's electoral votes.
And as we said with Joe Biden, he got the state of Washington, Oregon, California, the biggest prize in the Electoral College with 55 points. And we got Colorado, New Mexico, Minnesota, Wisconsin, and Michigan were both flips in 2016. And also those were the 2 pivotal states in which resulted in Donald Trump winning the 2016 election. And then Illinois, Virginia, New York, Vermont, New Hampshire, Maine, Nebraska, Massachusetts, Rhode Island, Connecticut, New Jersey, the vice president's residence, which is Delaware, and Maryland.
They're very close in electoral votes. Joe Biden sitting at a comfortable 253, whereas Donald Trump is left playing catch up with 214. And again, still 6 states left to be called. That includes Nevada, Arizona, which has been called by the Associated Press and Fox News. But every other news outlet that we've seen has been holding off on that result. Georgia is yet to be called. They're actually in the middle of a conference right now, town hall conference, to discuss some of the polling in Fulton County, where Atlanta is located. North Carolina is yet to be called, Alaska, and our very own Pennsylvania, considered one of the greatest battlegrounds that's out there. It's very interesting. Nevada is sitting with a Biden lead, 49.3% to Trump's 48.7%. Less than 8,000 votes there that are making up that difference between that lead. Arizona, Biden at 51, Trump at 47.6, and again, that was one that has been called by AP and Fox News. Georgia seeing a little bit of a closing gap. Trump sits at 50%, whereas Biden sits at 48.8%, well, less than 70,000 votes, between those 2 candidates. North Carolina and Alaska see Trump at a little bit more of a comfortable lead, although North Carolina is still very close. They have a 95% voter turnout on that. And Alaska right now, no mail-in or absentee ballots have been counted. It's just in person. So all of these states, major states to look out for, and some of them have announced that they will be seeing results as soon as tomorrow.
Yeah, that's right, Taylor. And also for all you folks at home to know, so as we did talk about, AP News and Fox News did call Arizona for Biden. And if that is the case, Biden would be at 264. So which means if Biden can win Nevada, he'll become the 46th president of the United States.
Absolutely. And Donald Trump, again, is leading in Pennsylvania, Alaska, North Carolina, and Georgia. If he wins all of those states, he will be sitting at 264 electoral votes. So the key to Donald Trump's victory tonight is, well, not even tonight, this election season, I should say, is to not only win all of those states, but to also pull ahead in Nevada. Arizona is looking like it's not going to happen for him. So Nevada is going to be this key state to look out for. Many predicting that it would be Michigan and Pennsylvania and Wisconsin. And we see that Wisconsin and Michigan are in Joe Biden's favor. Now, Donald Trump has come out to say that he will be requesting a recount in Wisconsin and Michigan because they are within that 1% gap between the two candidates, Colton.
Yeah, not to mention, Taylor, President Trump actually just followed a lawsuit with the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania with relations to those mail-in ballots.
And Michigan.
Yeah, in Michigan, that's right, Taylor, for those ballots that still need to be counted. Now, I think this, as Taylor just said, if you're a Democrat or a Republican, who would have thought the state of Nevada is what you folks at home are going to have to look out for, as Joe Biden has 49.33% of it, and President Trump is at 48.69, according to Bing. So it's it's just going to be interesting to see how, and who knows, maybe by tomorrow afternoon we'll see who the next president is, depending on when Nevada is going to start counting those votes.
Absolutely.
All right, so we have a lot of states to keep an eye on out, but we are going to go to a quick break.
When we come back, we'll bring you more breaking results from states as they come in, as well as updates on congressional races around the country and right here in Pennsylvania. We'll be right back.
Hey man, what's up?
Pretty good.
I see you're still smoking. You know smoking helps you age faster, right?
Nah, that's only a myth. Do I really look that old?
Hey man, what's up?
Pretty good.
I see you're still smoking. You know smoking helps you age faster, right?
Nah, that's only a myth. Do I really look that old?
Watching history happen here on Election Night 2020, but of course, we want to hear from you.
Yeah, you can ask us questions on our hashtag PointParkVotes on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook, and we'll be answering them throughout the night.
Welcome back. We talked to correspondent Nick Konopka last night about certain Senate races around the country. We're going to bring him back in again to break those down. Nick, what updates do you have?
Thanks, Taylor. Well, at the beginning of last night, the Democrats had high hopes for the Senate, especially in certain states, especially Maine. Maine was one of their big focuses. Susan Collins was the Republican candidate. She was the incumbent, and she was facing off against Sarah Gideon. In just over the past day and a half, Susan Collins came out as the champion with 51.1% of the vote. and Gideon had 42.3%. Now, this event of Collins winning sets her at her 5th term and making her the longest-serving Republican woman in the history of the Senate. And she was the only Republican to vote against the confirmation of Amy Coney Barrett. Whether that was a move to protect herself from losing the election remains to be unseen. Now, moving over to Iowa, that was another pickup that the Democrats wanted. Joni Ernst was the incumbent against Democrat Teresa Greenfield. In the course of the time of the election, Joni Ernst did come out as the winner, 51.8% to Greenfield's 45.2%, and just over a 100,000 vote difference. Now, this election did look to be in favor of Greenfield, but just in the weekend before the election, the accredited pollster Ann Seltzer released a poll that showed Joni Ernst was 6 points ahead, and that seems to be what's happening in the results. Now in Michigan, we have a different story of a Democratic seat flipping possibly to a Republican challenger. We have Gary Peters, the incumbent, who has 49.2% of the vote, and then we have Republican John James with only 48.9%. So that's a very tight race, and not all the results are in Michigan. That's less than 20,000 votes, and it is not yet called, and that would be a surprise flip if it were to go. And now an update from South Carolina. Lindsey Graham, the incumbent from South Carolina, was challenged by Jamie Harrison, the Democrat, and it has turned out that Lindsey Graham has won the race with 54.7% of the vote. Jamie Harrison did set a record for a Senate race fundraising based on the unpopularity of Lindsey Graham around the country, but it turns out that fundraising was not enough to set him over the top.
Seems like Michigan is just really making a name for themselves in this presidential election, of course. And even in the Senate races, that's to see a 0.3 difference is insane.
Yeah, no, yeah, that's right, Taylor. So I want to, Nick, I want to get to South Carolina because this was a race that I was watching. Do you think there was any chance for Jamie Harrison because I thought that he was gonna put up a fight against him, but it just didn't seem to turn out that way, as like you did mention, Nick, with the sort of unpopularity with Lindsey Graham around the country.
Well, that's the thing, especially during the confirmation of Amy Coney Barrett and the announcement of her nomination. Jamie Harrison did raise a lot of money, and that's where it came from, because of people believe that Lindsey Graham flip-flopped in his position between the Obama administration and the Trump administration. And we did see at that time Harrison rising in the polls, but it was only by a point or two, and we did see that lead fizzle out. So it was considered a toss-up, and we weren't sure what was going to happen, but we did see that the incumbent broke through.
And real quick, Nick, I'm so sorry. I want to talk about Susan Collins real quick because she was the only Republican who voted against Amy Coney Barrett, and she is now the longest running, or longest serving, I should say, woman in the history of the Senate, Republican woman, I should say. So she has been facing a lot of controversy, though, and I don't want to say it's surprising to see that she retained her seat, but Maine is a Democratic state, as we see from their 3 of 4 electoral votes have gone to former Vice President Biden. So, what do you make of her retaining her seat?
Well, you see, the senator from Maine is really considered a maverick in the Senate. She is very, as we saw with her vote against Amy Coney Barrett's confirmation, she is a very centrist candidate. She does swing between Democratic and Republican positions. So inside of Maine, she's kind of become an institution in herself with her way of voting, and especially since she's been there for so long, the people of Maine really have come to appreciate her in the Senate in the way that she does not stick to either side and kind of goes her own way.
All right, thanks, Nick. We'll bring you back later to talk about the congressional races that are happening in Pennsylvania. But stay tuned, because when we come back, we'll be discussing more key races, and this time, like I said, the ones that affect us right here in Pennsylvania and in Pittsburgh.
man, what's up?
Pretty good.
I see you're still smoking. You know smoking helps you age faster, right?
Nah, that's only a myth. Do I really look that old?
Hey man, what's up?
Pretty good.
I see you're still smoking. You know smoking helps you age faster, right?
Nah, that's only a myth. Do I really look that old?
You're watching History Happen here on Election Night 2020, but of course, we want to hear from you.
Yeah, you can ask us questions on our hashtag PointParkVotes on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook, and we'll be answering them throughout the night.
Welcome back. We've been following the congressional race for Pennsylvania District 18 between Democratic incumbent Mike Doyle and Republican challenger Luke Negron. And now we have those results.
I had the chance to speak with Congressman Doyle last week prior to his results coming in, so here is a look at the conversation that we had.
Now, I do want to maybe switch gears to term limits, because this was something that was brought up in your debate with your opponent, Mr. Luke Negron, who has been very adamant in his campaign, about term limits. So, as somebody who has been in Congress for 25 years, would you support term limits in the Senate and the Congress? Because this was a survey conducted in 2018 by a Republican law firm called McLaughlin, and Associates. They found that 82% of Americans were in favor of a constitutional amendment that will place term limits in members of Congress, and this is according to the website The Hill. Would this be something you would support?
No, there is a term limit. I mean, this is the confusing thing a member of Congress's term is 2 years. That's your term. You're never guaranteed more than a 2-year term. It's not up to me whether I get to serve more than one term or 2 terms. It's up to the 700,000 people in Western Pennsylvania that I represent. So every 2 years, I have to reapply for my job. I don't really know too many professions where you have to reapply for your job every 2 years, but mine's one of them. And then the people I represent have to make a decision. Is Mike Doyle someone we want to send back to Washington, D.C. to represent us, or we think maybe it's time for somebody different to do it because we're really not pleased with the way he's representing us. His votes don't reflect our beliefs or our concerns. He's not been active enough in the district. He's not really helped Pittsburgh move forward. You know, we need somebody that's going to be a little bit more dynamic or whatever reason. And every 2 years, that process takes place, not only in a general election, but in a primary election too. So voters in the Democratic Party might say, you know, Mike Doyle's not the kind of Democrat that we want representing us in Congress. We want somebody a little more liberal. We want somebody a little more moderate, or we want somebody that's going to be for this issue or that issue. And so I have had primary opponents in my last 4 or 5 elections, my last 5. And then I have general election opponents too. So every 2 years, there's 2 opportunities to say, we want somebody different. And it's not my choice. It's the choice of people in Western Pennsylvania who go to the polls and express their desire to see me continue to serve them or to pick somebody else. I think that's a pretty fair process. And I think it works well. So I don't know what some Republican law firm survey says. I'm sure, this is an issue popular with Republicans, and they've tried to make it an election issue. I don't think it carries much sway with voters because voters have the opportunity to vote for who they want. So I have a term limit. It's 2 years. Come November 3rd, my term could be up. People in Pittsburgh could say, you know what? You've been there too long. You're not really representing us the way we want to be represented. And we want a new voice in there. And they can go to the ballot box and they can do that. So I think that system works well.
Yes, yes. Yeah, but what would you have to say to maybe people who maybe criticize there not being term limits because it just seems like career politicians can just keep their power and they might not truly care about the people they serve because they know they've been in there for so long? What would you say to those people?
Well, I'd say that they're not really looking at the turnover in the Congress. When you look at the makeup of the United States Congress, people that have been there 3 terms or less are the majority now. So there's a lot of turnover taking place in the United States Congress every 2 years. You'll see a lot of it this election too. You're going to see a lot of incumbents get beat, and you're going to see a lot of new faces. We saw it in the 2018 cycle. We had 61 new members come into the Democratic caucus. So there's that's like, there's a constant turnover in the Congress, and that's a healthy thing too, because you need 3 things. You need people with the institutional memory of Congress. Otherwise, staffs run the government, not elected officials. So you need people that understand how these committee structures work and how the system works. And then you need new ideas coming in every 2 years. And I think we're seeing that in our Congress. There's lots of turnover taking place. As far as this career politician thing, I think it's funny. People run and they sing, "I'm not a politician." And I'll never forget, there was a person on my committee started a speech that way. And I said, well, guess what, buddy? You're a politician now. You might be able to have that little mantra when you were first running for office, but you're an elected official now. So you're one of us. It's the only profession I know where experience is somehow looked down on too. I mean, if we have someone that's been a cardiologist for 20 years and is really good at what he does as a cardiologist, that's the person we want to go to. Somehow, if you're a member of Congress who sits on a key committee like I do, or on a Ways and Means committee, and you've become an expert in tax policy or in telecommunications policy or energy policy, somehow that isn't valued by some people. So I just think voters ultimately have the final say-so. And all this talk of career politicians or political power, I'm the son of a steel worker. I grew up in a blue-collar family in Swissvale, okay? I've been married 45 years to my wife, who also grew up in Swissvale, and we raised 4 kids. And I've lived in this district my entire life. The idea that I'm some, political power person, or I come from some power family is kind of funny to me. It's talk. And I just think people judge you on your actions, not what you say, but what you do. And every 2 years, 700,000 people in this great part of the world that I love and have lived in all my life can tell me to go home anytime they want. And they do it frequently all over America. And I feel privileged that the people in Pittsburgh have chosen to send me back as many times as they did. And I continue to work very hard on their behalf. And I think they see that work ethic, and they know how much I care about them in this region. And I think that's one of the reasons on election day, I feel comfortable about what the result's going to be. But you never know till the votes are counted.
All right, so now we want to stick with Pennsylvania and tell you some of the other results coming out within the swing state. And we are going to be starting out with a district that has gained national attention all across the country, with Connor Lamb and Sean Parnell, who did speak at the Republican National Convention back in August. Now, Connor Lamb started out with a commanding lead, but Parnell has been able to climb back as he has 51.41 of the vote, and Mr. Lamb has 48.59. And then I'm going up north to your district, Taylor, the 16th district, in which Mike Kelly will be declared the winner with a 66.18% of the vote, and his challenger, Christie, Gimbis, will be credited with a 33.82 of the vote.
And of course, the 18th district that we showed you, the incumbent for Mike Doyle, Luke Negron came into this race declaring to be an underdog, and he put up a fight, but in the end, Mike Doyle did come out on top with 67.8% of the votes, over 100,000 more votes than his challenger, Luke Negron. He had 32.2% of the vote. Now, at the time of shooting this, we have 4 PA congressional districts that have yet to have a winner declared. Now, that's out of 18 in total. We are looking at District 7, 8, 10, and our very own 17 here in Pittsburgh that are still without a solid winner at this hour. So as PA, wraps up their presidential election results coming out within the next few days, hopefully, the deadline for mail-in ballots has been extended to this upcoming Friday, the 6th. Maybe those 4 districts will get their winner declared within that time.
And not to mention, Taylor, all of those districts are actually leaning red right now. So we'll see how that turns out.
And Pennsylvania has been, within this race, more leaning toward the red, whether it be in the presidential election or within these representatives. Nick, we're bringing you back. What do you make of it?
Well, I think this sort of red beginnings we're seeing with a more Republican-leaning vote is mostly a result of the lack of mail-in ballots that have been counted so far. We see with Connor Lamb's race, he is the incumbent Democrat. Obviously, it is more of a red area, so we do see it close. But as we see those mail-in ballots start to come in, they do lean Democrat because the Democratic Party did have a larger push for their constituents to use mail-in ballots. So we may see those numbers rise. But even in the results where it is not very close, like with Mike Doyle, you're probably not going to see much help for Luke Negron in that race. And in those swing counties, I think you are going to see some help for the Democrats through the ballots that do come in, but it's only just a matter of time as those ballots do come in until Friday.
Thank you, Nick. And it's worth pointing out that with the mail-in ballots, Pennsylvania, according to the New York Times right now, is 89% of their estimated vote total has been counted for the Parnell and Lamb race. Right now, according to the New York Times, it is Parnell at 50.2 and Connor Lamb at 49.8. A very close race, about 1,000 votes sits between those two. And if you scroll down just a little bit on here by absentee ballots, Lamb sits at a comfortable 76.4% of the absentee ballots, whereas Parnell sits at 23.6. We're seeing this all over the country where the mail-in ballots are more leaning toward the Democratic side, whereas the in-person ballots are leaning more toward the Republican side. So obviously we can't call anything until everything is said and done and all the votes have been counted, but it's interesting to see just how these mail-in and in-person ballots are evening themselves out.
And that's why, Taylor, the Biden campaign is so confident that they could still win Pennsylvania because like you mentioned, those mail-in ballots have usually come in between right here in Allegheny County and then also out towards Philadelphia. So they're still confident. Will it help them out in the end? I guess we'll have to wait and see in the next few days.
And as a real quick one, since we're talking about Pennsylvania being one of those key battlegrounds, just updated, the New York Times has that 88% of the estimated votes have been reported and counted. Donald Trump is still sitting in the lead with 51% of the votes, whereas former Vice President Joe Biden, is sitting at 47.7%. Now, this is about a 200,000 vote difference between the two of them, and it's, President Trump's lead is diminishing little by little. It's just going to be an interesting result to see what comes out of this when everything is called and said and done.
Mm-hmm. Alrighty, folks, so that's all the time that we have for you tonight. Thank you so much for tuning in.
We'll be continuing to watch history happen as we continue our election coverage right here tomorrow at 6 p.m. Until then, I'm Taylor Spirito.
And I'm Colin the Bias. Have a great night, everyone.